Gonna be a quick little stream. I commented on this before, but I thought I should try to like kind of show people what my issue is with the recent chapters. Um, there's a couple issues, but in terms of paneling, right, and shot choice, let's go over paneling, right? So one of the first things I noticed is when Kentaro Miura was alive, rest in peace, homie. Um, this is when he was alive, right? He follows pretty standard paneling when it comes to like panel designs, right? So normally, because it's Japanese and a manga, if you're unfamiliar with manga, you want to have some sense of a flow going from right to left and then up to down. So we have one, two, three, and then it goes back down. Do you see how it kind of follows those points? And this is also we're going to go over chapter 378, but we're going to compare it to chapter 340 because we have Rakshasa who is kind of introduced as the main villain in this part of the story. And this is when their team is when Kentaro Miura's team was like in full effect. They had been trained. They even did a side story with Kentaro Miura, and Kentaro Miura was still alive, so he was the one controlling the paneling and a lot of just the general design. So if we look at the story, right, how this chapter starts off is anticipation, right? We have establishing shot, sort of like, it kind of gives you a place of what's happening. It's like it's the calm before the storm, and then it has this punchline of the Rakshasa or Rakshasa. I don't know if it's the Rakshasa or just Rakshasa. I can't remember. But this is him looking at something, right? And there's anticipation. You as a reader are like, okay, what is he looking at? Who is that? And then you get a close up. So what's actually happening is from a shot perspective, right? The camera is right here. It's an over the shoulder shot, right? Like technically the camera would be like up here. Sorry, my perspective is I'm drawing on a fucking mouse, right? So what we're seeing is an over the shoulder shot. And this is very deliberate. So when it gets closer, the camera gets closer, we reverse shoot this, like we reverse the perspective here to show this relationship, like this anticipation and this sense of closing in. Like, see how this character, which is Rickard, he is like he feels enclosed. And if you look at the panel design, it goes from large to small to smaller to smaller, right? And then it goes back to large again. It's wide again. So this is very, very cinematic. This feels like a movie. Again, it's very simple. It's right to left, open space, close up again. And then what is this? Like, this isn't really necessary. But what this is doing, this is actually something you can see a lot in Better Call Saul. He draws attention to items, right? He builds up the sense of tension with like this buildup of anticipation, and he creates questions like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? And then it reveals it. It's a punchline, right? It's literally like a joke. It's literally set up punchline. And that's a lot of this is like visual structure. Now, if we contrast that to chapter 378 and how it opens, it immediately opens with a reaction shot, right? Now, normally when you are telling a story, whether it is visual or written or even sonically, the traditional structure is to have that setup first, and then you want to have the reveal, the punchline, right? Because if I just showed you what this was right away and we took this out, there's no sense of buildup. There is no story, right? Like if you are trying to tell if like if you're watching a horror movie, because this is kind of what a horror movie is, like the way this is structured like a horror movie or like a thriller, right? Like you're constantly wondering as a viewer, like what is happening? It's building up, it's building up. But if we cut all of this out, right? All of this shit out. with no questions or anything like that, and we just revealed it here and we just showed what this was, or even if we just deleted this entirely, just this area, and then we get like the surprise. Yes, you get like the gut punch feeling of surprise, but there's no anticipation. So one of the big things, just to kind of get to my point, long story long, is that there is no anticipation here. Now, a lot of people will say that yes, this is kind of like the buildup for like this is the punchline for this previous chapter, right? But structurally it isn't though. Because if you begin a new chapter just with like a reaction shot, you're accomplishing nothing. You're not like pulling somebody in, right? So here, even this has structure, right? You start with small, small, and then it gets big. Like, see what's happening here? It's an establishing shot that shows the situation, and then it goes into a reaction shot. There is a setup and then there's a reveal. That's literally storytelling 101. And this really bothers the fuck out of me. Like whenever I read these new chapters, because it's like, again, like people will say it's a stylistic thing, but this is just like a basic issue when it comes to storytelling. So that's a pacing issue. And yes, we have like a wider issue, like we have a wide shot here. Cool. Okay. So next we're going to go into perspective. Now, obviously, the assistants who took over have been trained by Kentaro Miura to kind of train in his style. But what Kentaro Miura failed to kind of assess with them was to teach them how to draw dynamic poses with like within perspective. If you look at this pose, look how insanely flat it looks, right? Like if you showed this to anybody at like I don't know, anybody who's like an animator, let's say, right? They would have shown this very differently. Like this is kind of like a static pose and it's very awkward, you know? I think like a different pose would have been like maybe here, um, like he's hunched over, and maybe he was like his back is like this, and then it contrasts that way. I don't know. And then look at his arms are like that. Like there should be some sense of pain, but this isn't really pain. This is like surprise. This is too sudden, right? And again, there's no anticipation and there's no buildup. This is a structural story issue again, right? So here we create the question of this is all anticipation. Where are we? Who are we watching? That's the answer. Who is he watching? Right? Who is Rakshasa watching? It is building up anticipation, 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 answer, right? Like all of this is an answer. It's a reply. It's a call and response, right? So what is he trying to do? Is he going to accomplish it? And then it creates a new question, like what the fuck is happening, right? He's following him, but what's happening? What the fuck is this, right? We have a new element, a new anticipation panel, and then boom, we have the reveal. Here, there is no anticipation. It's just like something that happened, right? He attacks him or he bursts out of him, and like you don't actually know what's happening. Is he attacking him? Is he bursting out of him? Because the first time I read the scene, like I hadn't read the previous chapter in like a month because that's how like long it takes the chapters to come out. Like it looks like he burst out of him, which I was like, oh, that's cool. But then I went back. I'm like, oh, like he had already like existed, you know, and his this guy had already died. So they're repeating something that it's fine to repeat that action again, which is what happened. Like, hold on, which is what happened here, right? Because if you go at the end of this chapter, he takes him, and then they repeat this again, but from a different angle. They're like, next time on Dragon Ball Z, right? They didn't do that here. They did this, and then they immediately went to a reaction shot. So structurally, this should be up here. And then the reaction shots should be here. So these two like rows should flip. And also this Yeah, like these two rows should flip, and it shouldn't start with a wide. It should start with something small, right? We can do that whole like structure. We can literally repeat this structure again. What happened here, right? It's literally right side. It's literally a column. We can repeat that exact same structure in chapter 378, right? Just boom, boom, one and two. We can take this image down here, move it up here, and then have like the wide shot to show exactly what's happening. And then we can show like the reaction shots of everybody around. So again, lack of anticipation. Sorry, to go back into the whole perspective thing, like if you talk to anybody who has any idea of anatomy and like perspective structure, like there is it's like really inconsistent. Like one of the first things I look for in a manga artist and any artist who draws a figure is the zygomatic arch right here, right? So if you draw, sorry, again, um I'm drawing with a mouse right now. But if you have your skull, right? This is the zygomatic arch, right? This is the thing. It's almost like a 90-degree angle. It's kind of like a cheat code to figure out um like the perspective. And you can kind of like put it in a box, like an invisible box. Okay, that's where the zygomatic arch is. Now, if you look here, like this, you create this box. This box is inconsistent with the perspective from this zygomatic arch, right? And again, like this is like I'm not trying to take away from anything. It's going to sound like I'm taking away something from like the artist, but these are just like clear quality issues in terms of just like basic fundamentals of storytelling and basic fundamentals of perspective. Now we're going to go into 2D graphic design and negative space. Now, one of the things that you'll notice, and one of the things, if you ask artists about Kentaro Miura and his art, they'll always say that he's incredibly detailed, right? But one of the things that people don't talk about is his use of white space. And I'm not going to call it negative space because it's technically not negative space. But what he does is the reason why you focus on that detail is because he creates white space that gives your eye like an ability to rest. Now, if we look at like any kind of like painter, like classical painter, like Rembrandt or Caravaggio, right? They have like moments of detail. Like this is all very, very detailed. But if you look at this is all like very simple shapes. This is where your eye can rest. Your eye can rest here, here, here. So if you, this is actually kind of like, this is just basic like design. Most of this image is is open space. Most of it is a lack of detail. Now, how does that relate? Even Rembrandt, right? A lot of people are like, oh, Rembrandt has a lot of details, but like he does it on purpose. Like all the parts that seem like to have a lot of details, just like the face, and maybe folds or something like that. And if you go to, yeah, you can go with like with this with any like good artist. Now, how does this relate? So when Kentaro Miura was alive, we have this. Look at that. That's open space. Open space. This is your eye can rest here. So that way, when you are looking at the details, you can actually like really focus on them. It's not muddled into the background, right? So you can do it in two ways. You can create a lot of detail to attract attention to something like this and this, right? Or you can create a lot of busy detail in the background so that way you can focus on the spaces that don't have any detail, like here and here, right, where your eye can rest. where your eye naturally goes to. And of course, that comes down to experience, and as long as you're doing it on purpose. Now, okay, here's another thing that you can look at when it comes to perspective. One of the first things you can look at is the bottom of a character's foot. This will indicate to you where the horizon line is, right? Horizon line is really far off the page. So we'll go into perspective. We'll go into perspective and detail in a second with chapter 378. Um, Look at how little white space there is here. Yes, this is a reaction shot, but this is all like gray. This is all like darker. And yes, these characters are darker, but it's not the first time he's drawn the Kushans, right? When he draws the Kushans, I think in that's Elf Island, Divine Right, City of Men, right? When he draws Kushans, look, he draws the Kushans, they have darker skin, right? I don't think these are Kushans, but this guy clearly has darker skin. And then you have negative space where your eye can rest. And all of this is where your eye can rest. But here, the only time that your eye can rest is in the thought bubbles or the speech bubbles. Like this is all very busy, and this might come down to like the quality of the scan, but I highly doubt that because like this should be whiter. This is too gray. This should be whiter. That's too gray. Because like I don't think it comes down to the quality of the scan because this is like a stark white and this is like a detail. Like these are unnecessary details. So what I would like for them to do is to increase more white and more open space. Just because you do a lot of scratch marks and a lot of like texture, it doesn't mean it's like a poor imitation. It's a strong imitation of Kentaro Miura's style, but a weak understanding of why he was doing stuff, right? Again, so we're going to go into the perspective issue, right? We have the zygomatic arch, which is like a free understanding of where the perspective is, right? So this is the zygomatic arch. Now, if we create this as a box, and yes, he's looking up, but you have this, which is a cylinder, basically. Look at where look at where the horizon line is on this. It's incredibly inconsistent, and the horizon line seems to be on the page, which is really odd, right? It's like, but then you have this horizon line here. Now, this might not be fair because like this guy's like looking up, but it doesn't even matter because it's just still follow that perspective. What's another one that we can do here? See what I mean? Like this makes no sense. These perspectives just they're so like insanely like inconsistent. Like these are just all floating heads, right? And you can do that actually, but it's just like that just seems to have no purpose to it. It has to be very, very clear. One thing that Mobius um said when he drew is that the more fantastical your design is, the more grounded the perspective has to be in reality, right? So if you look at any of Mobius's stuff, this is all very fantastical stuff, right? Like all very fantastical art, but you understand the perspective, right? So if you look at this, look, you have repeating parallels. These are parallel with each other. This is all like very obviously this is like fairly rigid compared to it. But if you look at when Miro was alive, right? Even though this is like kind of like a mishmash of everything, look, this is the zygomatic arch, right? But look, it's still this is all like within the same perspective, which is insane, right? Like you know as a reader that these like this matches the same perspective as that, like off like the top of my head, right? And so here, it also feels like the other thing that's really cool about his shot choices was it was very cinematic. Like he goes from this wide or this mid shot to a close-up shot, right? And you don't actually see that happen at all. There's no sense of a camera being moved, and there's no like this is happening, this thing is happening here, this thing is happening here. Like we have reaction shots, and then we have, yeah, it's like all in the same shot, right? But there's like I'm trying to look for a single time where we go from a mid to a close or a close to a mid. And this, you could say that this is that, but it's not because it goes from right to left, reaction shot, and it breaks that, right? Imagine if it was like I still can't find one. I can't find like this feeling of a camera, right? Imagine if like the first shot was this and then it got closer, right? It would create this sense of dread, you know? Like first shot is this wide, is this like kind of mid shot, and then the second shot is like this, but here, and it's just like much closer. That would be so much cooler, in my opinion, right? And it would just fall more in line with like Mira's work. Now, if you look at this in terms of balance, look at these are blacks in terms of value, and then this is white. Look how much balance there is here, right? It's like this is like a 70-30 ratio or a 60-40, right? And he tends to follow that very consistently. This is about 50%. And if we go back here, sorry, I'm kind of jumping all over the place. I should be trying to structure this like a video, but it's not. Like I'm just live streaming this. So here we have a lot of opportunity for white space that isn't being used at all. We're using these kind of action lines and they shouldn't be there. Like I really believe the action lines should not be there. Or if they're done, you create like look how much action is happening here, but there's still white space, right? That these are action lines. There's a way you can do action lines, but create like white space where your eye can actually see what's happening. Now, same thing here, perspective. Like all of these figures look like somebody who learned how to draw via the Loomis method, like Andrew Loomis back in the day, right? They all did like the Loomis method, but then they don't know how to like uh, make them feel more grounded. This is almost like a fisheye, you know? And people, the way people are laid down, they're kind of like set dressed to like lay down and how they die. Like this is, I think this is a clear example of like the artist's fundamental um like misunderstanding of anatomy and an inability to draw dynamic poses. Like if somebody is dead, this looks like somebody just like fell down and said, "Oh no," right? This guy looks shocked. This guy doesn't honestly look dead, right? None of these people look dead. You know that they're dead within the context of the story, but they don't look dead, right? So if we look at like dead people, like, look how much more Jesus, like, this was so good. His art was, like, unreal, right? Look, he has a dark character, but look, his lines are understandable, they're readable, they follow contours, right? And look at, like, this does not really follow a contour at all. These are just, like, kind of scratch lines, in my opinion, right? We have open space, open space, open space. This break in open space, I don't think it's okay. I guess I'm being a little too critical there. But here, again, we can delete these action lines. It's like this is like a Power Rangers, like, you know, like you don't need that. Just like delete that, create more space. In fact, if you have less detail the detail that you do have on purpose is going to look 10 times better. Like this whole scene would be so much better without this extra texturing. All of this extra texturing, not necessary at all. And it would, this contrast, it would contrast so well with this black value character, and also just from a design perspective, I would have like spread these out more so that like kind of droop and control. And like this silhouette is just not like intimidating at all. Like, look at this design. I would just like make him bigger right here, you know? I would make, yeah, I would make that like about that big. But right now it's kind of like puny. I would literally just double the size of that triangle. Here again, this is fine, I guess. I don't understand. Like, I think this is the odd that he's like expelling, the energy, like the prana, they call it. But again, more white space, please. So, panel design, these character, like, this looks so clunky to me. This reminds me of like Toyotaro and his traps, like the way he draws trapeziuses and shoulders. Now, if you look at like Toyotaro, this is like actually an example. Toyotaro Dragon Ball, right? He does this thing where um it's like this. Do you see this? Like he constantly draws like he doesn't know how to draw a neck or a character with a neck. They always look here, let me look at Super Dragon Ball. I know we're kind of like taking a little diversions right now, but this also bothers me too. This is a little bit better. Oh yeah, he's definitely gotten better. Okay, never mind. I think yeah, he's definitely improved. This shot, like, oh my God. Whenever I see that arch of the trapezius muscle, right? And the like shoulders, it really like really bothers me. Because this is like an actual issue with Toyotaro for like maybe 50 chapters. Okay. So anyways, right, then okay, he's definitely improved. But if you look at these like the anatomy on this, one, it doesn't really follow perspective and it just looks so stiff, right? It's like they're on a grid, but like they just look incredibly stiff. They don't look like real people. Remember what I said earlier? Like one of the first things you want to look for is people's feet and how and if they look floaty, right? If you look at this guy's foot, pretty well grounded. This person's foot, their heel is up. But now if you look at their weight, like this, so here, this is up. This hip should be the other way, you know? I don't know. Like yeah, it's just the perspective. And if we look for like city shots, let me take a look. Oh, chapter 341. I do 340. Blaze puppets. Where is it? Dawn of an Empire, maybe? Is it this one? Look how obviously this is Falconia, everything's supposed to be bright and colorful, but look how like grounded these characters feel, you know, within the scene. It's because they're matching like perspective. Look at his feet. They're like matching perspective here. This one, like the perspective here is a little like goofy. One thing I really found interesting in the later part of the series was how everyone looked a bit more cartoonish. kind of on purpose. And I think it was a stylistic choice because once you got to like these kind of like fairy, like the fairy island or whatever, people became much more like chibi, like much more cute. And if you compare that to, let's see here, like this arc, right? Look how much white space. I think this is before he was doing digital. Look how much white space there is, bro. And black. That's what Rakshasa should look like, dude. Rakshasa should look like this. He should look imposing as fuck because that's like the dread. And look, what is this? Chat, what is this? Anticipation panels. Anticipation, build up, right? White space, perspective. Look how dark and gritty and more realistic everybody looks. And even this, look, white space. He's using I literally think he's using whiteout here, right? Even this, like, I feel like if you asked the assistants or the new artist base, basically who took over to Berserk, to recreate this panel within their own style, they would just add like so many unnecessary um like scratches, texture lines. They would just like they would kind of ruin it. And then they would be like, action line here. It's just so unnecessary. Was there anything else I wanted to go to? So basically the main thing is like one, anticipation, like just anticipation and then reveal, anticipation and reveal. That's literally what all of storytelling is. You have anticipation and then you have the reveal, right? So anticipation, reveal. That's literally what mystery is. Like literally joke telling. It's all the same structure, and then you can do that with a camera as well, right? So if we look at Struggle in the Dark, this we have. I would love to see more cinematic shots where it's just zooming in, right, and then zooming out, and you feel like you're watching a movie or something like that. And this is just like boom. This is like a zoom in technically, but there's something about it like it feels really unsatisfying. I think that was the first zoom in this chapter. Everything else is just like kind of displaced and there's like no purpose or continuity. And again, this shot would look so much better if we took all of this space right here and we cleared that out. This would look 10 times more imposing, in my opinion, if this was just, but this is just so muddy. Like, yes, he's trying to create this feeling, like they're trying to create this feeling of darkness, this taking over again, but it's not working. Like, yes, it is working, like, it just looks muddy. So, again, if you want something to look darker, you add a little bit of light, right? If you want someone to feel despair, you give them a little bit of hope, right? Like, there should be moments in the story where, like, right now people are just being torn apart, but there should be like a little mini story of maybe, let's say, this lady with a jug, she drops her jug, grabs her baby, and it looks like they're going to get away, but then like one of these dudes, like one of these troll motherfuckers, comes around and kills her. Like that would be a cool like little visual show to like people are trying to get away, like a little 1 2 3, like one, there's the lady, two, she tries to get away and it looks like she's getting away, and then three, she dies, right? But right now it's just like plot. There's like no like little character moments. Okay, that's pretty much my rant. I'm done. I'm gonna like post this on YouTube, and then I'll probably just get a shitload of hate comments, but we'll see how it works.